Brilliant. Okay, so today we are joined by Martin Chisnall and Pete Lambert. Thank you so much, both of you, for being here with us. Basically, you are responsible between you for hundreds and hundreds of shows over the years, and I thought there was nobody better to pick the brains of. So I wonder if we start with a little bit about each of you and your background and sort of the route to where you are now. Martin, do you want to kick us off?
Yes, I am very old. I've been doing this for far too long. I got into the industry through the National Youth Theatre when I was indeed a youth. Sort of dropped out of a university degree course in electronic engineering because I wasn't paying enough attention, and I kept going off to do theatre fit-ups instead. And then I was lucky enough to get a job at the Lyric Theatre Hammersmith as an assistant electrician. That was my first proper job. From there I went to the Arts Theatre in the West End. Then I went to the Theatre Royal Stratford East for a couple of years as chief electrician. And then I went freelance, and I've been freelance, 20 years easily.
Oh, 30, Martin, come on.
Oh, I was trying to be discreet, Pete. All right, 30 years if you will.
Gotta be 30.
Let's settle on 25 years,
Okay.
shall we?
Okay.
And yeah, so freelance 25 years. Used to do bits of everything, bits of telly, bits of corporate, bits of conference, bits of events, but now almost exclusively theatre and mostly West End theatre at that, with a little bit of international touring thrown in.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, haven't worked really since March like the rest of us.
Yes, yeah, tricky. Pete, what about you?
Right, I was trained through the ABTT back when they did proper year-long training courses for all departments, actually, back then. Lighting, sound, carpentry, wigs, wardrobe, scenic. There was a proper year-long course. So that was back in the early to mid 80s, that was. So I trained with them. I'm actually a qualified electrician deep down, although I never kept it up. And I was quite scared to learn this week that the current regs are the 19th and I got trained on the 15th or something like that. So they change every 10 years or something. So part of that course is they attached us to either a West End theatre or a hire company, a rep for each term. So I got the London Palladium, I got White Light, and I went very briefly to Leatherhead, which then closed down. So I went back to the Palladium, where I got my first job as one of the on-stage perch follow spot operators for about 2 weeks. And then I was so bad at that they put me on stage electrics. So I finished that course, walked around the West End, handing out CVs, paper copies, electronic stuff just didn't exist then. Got a job at the Palace Theatre. They were looking for someone there and then. That was pre the original Les Mis, if you can imagine that far back. That's where I met the legendary Fraser Hall. He was the deputy at that point. I did a couple of years there. Les Mis started. That was December 85 or November 85. By about May, I realised that it was going to carry on running for several years, and I was offered a tour. So I left there and went on tour, which is probably a good thing, because I went back 18 years later to do the loadout, and 2 of the people above me were still there. So I wouldn't have really progressed very far by that point.
Yeah.
I toured for a couple of years. I worked for full-time for a company called Harold Fielding Limited. Cameron McIntosh used to be one of Harold Fielding's ASMs. There you go. So he discovered people like Shirley Bassey, and he did the 2 Ronnie's tours and stuff like that. So he was a massive name at the time. He's sadly passed away. I did some tours for them. Did some tours for Apollo Leisure, as it was then. And so I got bored of that and went to freelance, really. That was late 80s, early 90s. I've been freelance ever since. Martin does more West End shows than I do. You do a lot of plays, Martin, don't you?
I do.
Yeah, I find them terribly boring. I don't like them. So I've sort of, I look after a lot of American transfers. So I'm lucky to have Don Holder, Natasha Katz, Ken Posner, the late Hal Binkley, all very, very loyal clients of mine. So there you go. So yeah, I enjoy putting on big touring musicals is what I like doing.
And I think I probably first met you on an Apollo tour, didn't I?
I think so, yes. Something that Nick Richings would have been the lighting designer, I would have thought.
I would say too, yes.
And do you remember that dreadful thing we did at the Aldwych? The Fields of
down more than that. We've done so many dreadful things, Pete.
Okay, well, the Fields of Ambrosia, where
Yes.
Nick wasn't there. So you focused half the rig and I focused the other half, and then we agreed
how did that go?
that must be right, because we realised that we'd been focusing his shows the same way for the last couple of years, so it must be right.
That's ring a bell now.
Yeah, and that was.
But unlike you, who appears to have proper qualifications, I have no formal training or qualifications in what I do whatsoever.
Blimey, Martin! I never realised that.
A good thing or a bad thing, but it happens to be the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as you started off a degree in electronic engineering, you understand electricity.
Well, it's like a lot of people in this industry. We're very good at being jack of all trades, possibly master of none. So knowing a little bit about everything is a very handy asset in life.
Yes.
Brilliant. So what I'm really keen to talk about is exactly this: is your sort of working relationship with each other and with designers, and the fact that it is a team effort. It's not a one-man band, and basically what pushes your buttons at work, and find out a little bit more about what people should and shouldn't be doing in a way. So what if we start right at the very beginning? Martin, I'm going to sort of bounce back and forth between you, but please do jump in. When did you get brought on board? I mean, how far in advance of a show were you first brought on?
It is so variable. I think just about every question you can ask me, I'm going to say, well, it really depends on the situation. Like Pete, there are certain lighting designers who I'm lucky enough to get on with, and they will generally ask for me. So if they've got projects they know are happening later that year, they might ask for me, many months in advance, which is always nice. Other times it might be a production manager who's suddenly been lumbered with a show that's going in a couple of weeks' time. They've barely just appointed the lighting designer. They just need somebody who knows how to hang a few lights, and they might randomly call me. So there really is no one answer. It could be, literally a few weeks to several months. Yeah.
And do you think there's a difference between, like, you, Pete, with big sort of touring musicals, and then some of those West End plays? Is the lead time different?
A little bit. I mean, I was approached in July this year for the new production of Beauty and the Beast, which loads in April next year. But that's really quite rare. You tend to hear of shows months in advance, and you sometimes get a nod from a lighting designer that they'd like you to do it. But then you've got to go through the producers and the production manager as to whether they actually want to use you or not. So you can go from knowing about something for 6 months, and then you actually only get the nod a month before. Like Martin says, they're all different. Sometimes you get people that have had to pull out for whatever reason, and you're going, "Oh, right, when's this load in? Oh, 2 days' time." And you go, oh, "Okay, yeah. Well, I'm not doing anything, so I'll do my best." And hanging lights is hanging lights, really.
Yeah.
So I always say, we hang lights and we run flex. It really isn't difficult, so long as you do it properly.
Yeah, fair enough. And I mean, how much involvement? I mean, okay, in an ideal scenario, how much involvement and time is there for you both before you actually get into a venue? What is that pre-process that no one sees?
Again, it's very, very variable. At the moment, Pete's doing Beauty and the Beast. I'm due to be doing Frozen at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane, if it ever actually reopens or ever actually happens. And I feel like I've been doing that show for about a year already, and I almost have been doing it for a year already. Yeah. So, yes, the involvement there is just massively ongoing, because it also involves effectively a new theatre with a new installation. So lots and lots of stuff to get my head around. There is also an element of the job sometimes expands to fill the time available. It feels that way at the moment.
certainly at the moment, Martin, isn't it? I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm meant to be doing a day and a half and a month for Disney on Beauty and the Beast, and I can probably do 2 days a week just because there's stuff. So I've been basically on the books since July. The lighting bid went out last night. So up until now, we've been doing practicals. So the Set Electrics, the first shot came in at $1 million, and they don't have that. So we're going through. But since July, we've just been dealing with Set Electrics. In fact, the lighting bid hasn't gone out. The non-disclosure forms have gone out, and once they're returned, we will then release the plans and the.
You mustn't talk about this, Peter.
Yeah. It's all a load of lights that no one's got, and strangely enough, no one's going to have the money to buy them. But anyway, so
yeah. And what I'm finding at the moment is because all the different departments are working on this one show, but we sort of don't have a timescale to when that show is going to happen. Everybody's sort of working at their own pace, and we're all at different stages of the process.
Yeah.
So, I might phone up somebody in video going, how are you going to do this? And they go, I don't know, I haven't even begun to think about that yet. I'm not going to think about that for another 2 months.
Yeah.
And I go, oh, okay, fair enough. And then somebody might phone me saying, how am I going to do such and such? And I go, well, I don't know, because I haven't got to that bit yet. So the whole process at the moment is completely disjointed, which is making it quite hard work.
Yeah.
And that's because there's no time scale, isn't it? Normally You're going, right, I need to churn out this paperwork by this date, whether that's 2 days' time, 2 weeks, 2 months. And surprisingly enough, that paperwork that you can do in 2 days, you can also spend 2 months doing. And you come up with the end result. I mean, maybe in the 2-day one, it's just a little bit more shonky, and I think you tend to order more kit. Would you not agree, Martin? When you've only got a couple of days, you just go, I'll round it up on the grounds that it's better off to be looking at it in the theatre than looking for it. So, and you can always get the company to come back and pick it up what you don't use. So
yeah.
And what was I going to say? I often feel what Disney should have done at the moment, particularly with Frozen, is say, everybody just stop work, bugger off for 3 months. We'll all come back on the 1st of December and we'll start then. But until then, nobody's allowed to do anything. And then at least we'll all be at the same stage in the process.
Yeah. In that normal sort of time frame, whatever that's. I can't
remember that long.
Yeah. If we cast our minds back, I presume there's always a conversation around negotiating being paid for that prep work, the stuff that a producer can't see, as it were. Is that something that how do you arrange basically that paperwork and all that stuff that is part of your job? How do you agree that in I suppose, contractual terms, as it were?
I like to get in early. One of the first things I do when I know I'm on a job is produce my own spreadsheet of man days. So before, this is going to sound terrible, but before even a production manager gets a chance to phone me up and say, well, we haven't got any money, Martin, so I've already sent him a spreadsheet saying how much I think it's going to cost, so I've already taken the initiative there. And that spreadsheet itemizes how many days pre-production I think the job feels like, and then how many prep days at a lighting supplier, typically White Light or PRG or somebody, how many days that is before we even load into the theatre. And then it's got the loading crew, the focusing crew, slowly diminishing down through, first preview, going all the way through to opening night. So one of the first things I do is hang that spreadsheet on the table. So there can't be any doubt going forward. It's not, because the longer you leave it, the more awkward it becomes to broach the conversation almost, I find.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's one production manager I know that asks for that. That's Richard Bullymore, the great Richard Bullymore. I think he's 74, 75 now. And he'll often phone me up and say, I can't tell you what the show is. It's going to load in here. Can you give me a rough budget? So he's after figures. And as Martin said, if you present so not just a figure, you don't just go, it's going to cost you £10,000. If you come up with this is where all your money is going to go, and go, this is what I think, then, and obviously, I'm sure you do the same, Martin, but I always make that more days so that production manager can think he's won because he's knocked 5 days off you or something like that. So you always bump it up for absolutely every single person. You make it look like a bigger job than it is. That figure might be a shock to them, but once you've done a bit of argy-bargy, you've come down to something that if you start off by telling someone exactly what it's going to cost, you'll never get that amount of money. You'll get 90% of it or 80% of it. But Martin, I agree with Martin, going in early, saying it's going to cost this is the amount of time I need. That's the best way forward. So, and I would guess for an up and coming designer, but when you agree to light a show, you need to know what that weekly budget's going to be. Because there's no point designing some massive lighting rig to find out you've only got £1,000 a week or 200. You need, and I'm sure Martin will agree, there's the number of times that designers say, "Oh, this is the rig, it's going to be fantastic," and then by the time you actually get to load it in, it's a third of what they wanted because they haven't realised quite how little money there is. So it's pretty rare, isn't it, Martin, that people go, "Oh, we've got more money to spend. You can have some more lights." The producers always want to cut back a bit.
Well, it's interesting. Isn't it? We could discuss what we fondly call the arrival of the golden checkbook.
Yes, we could do. Yes.
Should we touch on that briefly? So budgets are never quite what you want during the fit up process, and you're always being beaten down and down and down until you're in the theatre and you're in tech generally, and it's not going very well, and the designer can't achieve the lighting the director wants. And they turn around and go, "Well, yes, we could have done this, but unfortunately X, Y, and Z, which I did want, got cut." And then suddenly the producer will go, "Okay, well, how much would that cost?" And you go, "Well, it will cost a couple of £1,000 for the run." And then suddenly, lo and behold, the money is found, and what had been, shall we use the term, value engineered out earlier on in the process is suddenly available again. So you do see that happening quite a lot.
Yeah.
And we see it across all departments as well, don't we, Martin? It's not just lighting. You see it happen across sound and scenery, and especially special effects. They suddenly decide that they want dry ice or something like that, or one smoke machine's not enough, and blah blah blah. And they want a different set of wigs and a bigger, better costume. And all of a sudden, that golden checkbook lands with a big thump, and off you go. Spend.
Because it's very rare that these production managers and also producers haven't got some sort of contingency money somewhere. It's just a question of at what point is that going to be released and how do you access it, really?
Yeah.
Quite often you'll find with shows that have multiple producers involved, when you're rehearsing in the actual theatre, suddenly all the various producers suddenly start showing up and looking at the product that they have invested in on taking place on stage, and they'll go off into little huddles going, "Oh, I thought we were doing such and such here," and somebody go, "Oh no, that had to be cut," and they'll go, "Oh no, I really want that." And so money does become more available often when you're in the theatre.
And do you find that on those on the gigs that you maybe have less lead time on, do you ever find that there's a sort of frustrating moment of being almost out of the loop with conversations between an LD and a PM that really ideally would have gone through you, but because you've not been on board soon enough, hasn't happened? Does that ever happen with you?
Yes, it can happen. I get more frustrated about conversations that happen when I am on board, that happen behind my back. Well, it would be nice to have been involved in that conversation. Again, it depends, I think, on your relationship with the lighting designer, how well you know them. And I think both Peter and I generally know our lighting designers. I use the phrase "our lighting designers," so we know what's going on and what to expect, I think.
Yeah. Do you feel the same, Pete?
Yes. Yeah. You quite often, you do find some production managers, they twist the story slightly. So they say, "Oh, so-and-so said it would be fine." So you carry on down a route, and then your designer comes in and goes, "Well, why is that in the wrong place?" And you go, "Well, so-and-so said that was okay to move that for that piece of scenery," or something like that. And it turns out that conversation hasn't actually been had. It's just the production manager maybe trying to pull a quick one.
Tricky.
And that a lot of that goes down to not having the correct set of plans and all that sort of thing.
It's also entirely possible for two people to have a mini production meeting between themselves, and for both of them to walk away with completely different concepts of what's just been agreed.
Oh yes, yes.
But maybe that's just life in general as well. So.
Yeah. And do you think that there's is there anything that you can think of that is sort of commonly misunderstood about who's responsible for what? I mean, like especially early doors. Is there a bit that you ever turn around with your lighting designer and go, "Now I take it you've done this," and they go, "Well, I thought that's you, isn't it?" Is that a thing?
I'll give you a different example. I'm sure Pete will relate to this as well. I mean, there are some items of equipment that are always a bone of contention. Plays with music or musicals. Who's doing the music stands, for example? Cue lights is always an interesting one.
Who's supplying the genie, Martin? Because it's only
supplying the genie. Yes,
it's only a part of access equipment. But what you have to remember is a proper genie is about £12,000. It's not a couple of £100 to purchase. They're, if someone agrees, oh, we'll throw in 2 genies, it's equivalent to them saying you can have 10 moving lights these days. It's and then I quite often say to a production manager, "Can I borrow your car?" Well, how long for? Well, the run of the show. No, why? Well, you want to borrow a genie? It's the same thing. They're high value items that people think they can throw in. Can you put in half a dozen flight cases for the carpenters? Maybe the scenic company can put in half a dozen flight cases for the carpenters. And, people just assume that because White Light or PRG or Hawthorne or whoever have thousands of flight cases, they're free. But a good general purpose flight case is probably £500, even to White Light, who buy them by the thousand.
Yeah.
So there's this sort of, I'll get White Light to throw that in. I'll get him to chuck some music stands in. Get him to chuck a cue light system in, which, if that happens, then we then end up having to try and run XLR3 around the bloody building, which is,
Cable for the automation department is another.
Yes, mains cable for them. Yeah.
Yeah. Automation don't seem to have any cable of their own. They just expect we're going to supply it for them, and they expect that the lighting hire company is just going to throw it in for free.
Yeah. What seems small to them is quite a big deal, isn't it? Really, it's
it can add up very quickly. I mean, if you're running 63 amp 3-phase from the substage to the grid a couple of times, suddenly that's a lot of 30-meter lengths of 63 amp 3, and it has a value.
Yeah.
I on the bigger shows, I generally just get another quote. So I'll get, can you sort out automation? So you find out what they want, and then I'll go to the hire company and say, I'd like the same terms as we got for the main rig, so whatever discount it is, but for this cable and whatever. And then strangely, when that comes in and it's going, wow, that's going to cost an extra £5,000-6,000 a year, people start realizing how much it actually is, and they can actually go and buy it for less than that. So go, fine, go and buy it. Then it's your own problem. So
yeah.
Because it isn't just a couple of bits of cable. Copper is pretty much the most expensive it's ever been at the moment. As a world commodity, and why should people give it away for free?
Yeah, absolutely. If we look slightly at plans and paperwork for a second, I feel like there is a bit of a culture, maybe you could say it, of beautiful works of art, pieces of paper that are plans, but they're not necessarily particularly helpful as a working document. What are some of the things that, as a production electrician, you really need on that plan?
The correct information.
Good. Thanks for coming, everyone.
So it's all very nice having a little plan with someone's even drawn the C clamp onto a light or whatever. Poof, just a waste of the internet. It really is. Sending through these files that are now gigabytes, not megabytes. Having unit numbers, I quite like. I like having a channel number. American LEDs. Go on, Martin.
I like a plan drawn to a scale.
Yes, that's also good. Good.
I think the art of drawing plans to a scale is a dying art.
And what you don't see very often either is a scaling bar.
Yeah.
I.e. something across the cross line and up the side telling you this is 1 meter, 2 meter. Because it's so easy for someone to go, I'll print that as a PDF, and it's down to 98%. And then the next person does it, and you're down to 94%. So you end up with a plan that claims to be to scale, but isn't. And that's the difference sometimes of that lighting bar fitting through 2 walls and not fitting through two walls. So,
yeah, absolutely. So, loss of scale on a transfer to PDF is a major problem.
I mean, a lot of the most of my American LDs, you get a plan, or you get a lighting plan will be on maybe 5 or 6 different plates, because that's the way you do it, and you'll get a unit number. If you're lucky, you'll get a channel number, because that's what Americans do. A lot of the UK people, like, you get a Mark Henderson, you get the color on it and what gobo you're going to do. You get everything. They work in 2 completely different camps, don't they, Martin?
They do. Well, with Mark Henderson, you'll get the information eventually, probably a couple of days before you load in.
Yeah. And he'll say, I know I've drawn this as a Fresnel, but it's actually a PC. But you sort of forgive him for that, because he does tell you what he actually wants. And
also at the end of the day, the show's going to look beautiful, so it's all fine.
Yes.
I tell you, the other missing bit of paperwork, which really is a dead art now. Actually, not so much on the American side, but certainly on the UK side. I'm just
not a section, Martin.
You've heard of it too, Pete.
Oh, God, yeah.
Do you remember those? A good section is almost as valuable as a ground plan, because it just reveals so many problems before you've even got into the theatre, and yet nobody draws them anymore.
No.
Yeah. And do you ever wish that we did follow that sort of more American route of lots of things spread out over multiple documents, or is our sort of big master thing helpful?
Oh, they've both got their bonuses. So an American lighting designer will not sit with a plan in front of him or her. They sit there with cheat sheets, and that's how they're all taught. So that goes from when people are in college or university. That's what they're taught to do. There's a massive market in America for people trained to be associates and are associates all their life. And the good ones can knock out the correct paperwork so quickly. The bad ones fuck it up all the time. But it's making sure the lighting designer has those correct cheat sheets in front of him. It's making sure that myself and Martin have that equipment list, and more to the point, the equipment list is correct. So, but some people like with a plan in front of them. Some people don't. So,
yeah. And how do you when you receive the plan? Do you like a careful Vectorworks that's ready to export into Lightright, or do you just want a simple PDF, or how do you like it?
An American associate will send you the plan and the Lightright. That is their job, to create the Lightright. So how they do that differs. Some of them, there's only a few that use Vectorworks properly, so that it can be exported. Quite often they are just pretty pictures, and they have no real substance. So the lights don't know they're on a lighting position. They're just a nice, pretty source 4 drawn somewhere. I'm not a great one for this. You can get a Vectorworks and you can export it to Lightright, and then you can make a change and send it back again. I've seen it go wrong so many times. So but one big thing is never trust any information unless you can verify it yourself. So the first thing I do, there's a bid list out and there's a plan. I count the number of lights physically, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because I've had shows where we're 20 lights missing on the bid list because someone hasn't counted a lighting position, or those lights exist on the plan but they don't belong to a lighting position, so they've just not been counted. So, or
absolutely.
Someone in Lightright has for some reason put something into system B, not system A, and they've asked it to only count system A. So all of a sudden, one whole lighting position has just disappeared off all the paperwork. So check everything's right. Check your quantities. Check. Once you've got your budget and you've drawn your plan, check the number of lights you've drawn on the plan corresponds to what you've asked the lighting company for. Plus a couple of spares.
Do you think you get too much information on a plan ever?
Yes.
Next. I did wonder. You see them that they've got, might look beautiful with loads of Setelex info all around the edge and stuff, and you just go, but I can't actually read what this is doing. Like this is.
I mean, I think it's a major difference, isn't it, between the American way and the traditional British way. So America's grown up with the lighting plan just has symbols on it and unit numbers, and originally nothing else, and all the other information was in the Lightright. So you'd refer back to Lightright using the position and the unit number. So unit 7 on number 3 electric, for example, you'd go away and look up in the paperwork, and that would then tell you what colour was in, what gobo was in, what its focus was, blah, 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 blah. Whereas traditionally, of course, we've grown up not with light-right, and traditionally everything was written on the lighting plan.
Yeah.
Which was sort of fine when we just had channel numbers and a bit of colour information. That was fine.
Before the toys started arriving, Martin.
Before the toys started arriving.
Yeah.
And then I remember I would take that plan and then I would handwrite dimmer numbers on it. And that would effectively become the patch. But the lighting plan was the sole bit of information. It all started going a bit wrong, as Pete said, when the toys started arriving, when things started having DMX addresses, and quite often multiple DMX addresses. Suddenly there was just too many numbers.
We went through, like when scrollers first came out, they had to have their own channel number. Desk didn't know what an attribute was. So you would have Parkan number 1 with its scroller, which now do you make that number 2, or do you make it, Andy Bridge would have made it 11, because that meant that on the channel layout of a light palette, the scroller information was underneath the intensity information.
Okay.
You know, some people put them into the hundreds, blah, everyone had a different way, but you ended up with a plan with just hundreds of different numbers on it.
Yeah.
So you couldn't just say, turn all those Parkans on and make the scrollers go blue, because that was another whole set of numbers to add in as well. So, and then people started, moving lights came along, and then they get different gobo loads. So how do you say that's got an A load and a B load and blah, blah, blah. And it just, same with scrollers. I did a West End show and the scrollers ran from A to K. There was that many different sorts. The great Richard Pilbrow. Some of them stayed in the same colour for the entire show, even though there were 32 frames loaded. But anyway, I digress. So,
gosh, and if plans like and just because it's the first thing that comes in my head, Martin, like Mamma Mia, that is something that's been into so many venues. Around the world. Is the plan one plan that is sort of like, here is the universal thing, or is it drawn for each venue, or how does that work?
There is only one Mamma Mia, only one lighting plan that does the same the whole world over. If only.
Yeah.
How many shows have we done, Pete? We've gone, right, this is going to be the show. This is the footprint for the show. It's never going to change.
Right. Well,
it always changes. It always changes.
You've done many more Mamma Mias than I have, and the 3 that I've done, the rigs were all completely different. So you just sort of go, stuff just changed. There's never a universal plan. Every show is unique.
So you start off with the best will in the world, but then if a show is successful, suddenly you find there are different associate designers involved around the world, and each associate wants to put their own little stamp on the show. So they make little changes themselves, and then over time the equipment gets tired, so the designers want to start using new, supposedly better equipment, so that changes. And then suddenly the show goes somewhere that's a little bit too small for it, so some cuts have to be made. And very quickly you're into a huge quagmire of different plans.
I don't know about you, Martin. The thing that really, and this really annoys me about Lion King, because I've been involved in Lion King for 21 years. I guess you've done Mamma Mia for 22 years, haven't you? But I remember, Martin, that nasty green discharge.
We weren't going to talk about that.
Oh, sorry. So no one draws a Lion King from scratch. So we did the latest UK tour last summer. What have we called it? It's called the Rhino Tour, that one, and that's the next unique. So we've got LED moving lights. We changed it all again, but none of the 4 associates involved could draw that plan from scratch. They all started on their favourite one and bastardise it. Okay. So you end up with stuff that just isn't correct. And you're going, but I've done it to the plans. Maybe we should have changed that. So I had £80,000 worth of custom sidelight towers built, and the first thing we did was chop them up a bit because someone hadn't drawn the section properly. So we were chopping 2 feet out of towers to make it the right height, and you just go.
That's what Howard Eaton was telling me about the other day. Now it makes sense.
Yes. So So follow spot, on stage follow spot, Martin. They have stands as well. You can't just draw the follow spot on a platform in the middle of nowhere. It's got to go on a stand.
It's crazy, isn't it?
I knew I'd learn something today. You see?
Yeah, yeah.
It's worth my while turning up.
Yeah. So, but
Something
yeah,
I do like about the Mamma Mia plan through the years, though, is that you can spot some of the channel numbers have consistently stayed the same.
yes,
yes. From the very first production. So I know, for example, 321 through 326 is the front of house general cover, and that's always the same. And some channel numbers come and go over the years, but some have stood the test of time.
But what's interesting saying that, Martin? So Don Holder has a numbering system, and that's the same across every show. So any show that I go to, I know that generic channel 1 will be the front of house unit that lights downstage centre. Full stop. 1, then it goes 2, 3, 4, 5. Every single show I've done with him. So actually, his numbering system, it works for him. And it only takes me a while to look at the plan and go, oh God, we're doing this with this mad idiot again, where nothing runs in order, but it does in his mind. So, they all have their, some of it carries through to every show. So,
And when you're approached about these, I mean, I was going to go with like set elects and practicals. I mean, what are some of the things that designers should be asking you in terms of specifics when they're describing what they want or drawings for it? What are some of the things they should really be considering?
I want to work with any designer who can resist the urge to cover the set with LED tape.
Yep.
Okay.
Get my vote immediately.
What I quite like when they're caking a truck with birdies is what they actually want to do with that birdie or flood, not just it has to be here. Like this birdie needs to backlight this doorway, or because quite often where they've drawn it, there's some massive lump of metal in the way, or there's something that you can't achieve. So something on the plan saying these birdies are doing X or Y, then we can just take our own interpretation of that. And, and we're fully aware that you don't really want to see the lights when you're sitting in the auditorium. People don't really need to tell us that. It's been going on for quite a long time that generally the public don't see the lights. So it's an old-fashioned concept. It might catch on one day. I don't know.
Like the section, we can hope, can't we? Really,
section, or for the scenic people, masking the show. That'd be good. That doesn't seem to be taught in college any longer. Actually, mask the show. So, use that border to mask your lighting bar, or not mask your lighting bar if that's what you want. But so many times I've had designers and they look up and go, "Oh, I wasn't expecting that." Yeah. Well, what were you expecting? You're part of the design team. You should know everything about it. So. Yeah.
And are things like if they're talking about, I don't know, festoon or something, is it important to state what source it is, like rather than just be like it's festoon? I want an LED equivalent that looks like tungsten, or
Well, just rewinding to birdies from the previous conversation. Birdies are increasingly hard to get hold of now. Almost impossible.
Yes.
And that's the same with festoon. Anything that relies on a tungsten light source is really difficult. Rock and roll shit these days.
Yeah.
So again, on Mamma Mia, we toured for many years with a tungsten festoon system, and I spent a long time trying to get it changed to LED, and we wouldn't until we found something that did a really good simulation of a tungsten festoon system. And we did finally find one and changed just last year, in fact. But any practicals, even the smallest practical, a desk lamp on a table that's designed to take a 60-watt BC domestic light bulb.
Yep.
You can't do anymore. It's a right pain in the backside.
Yeah. I had that beginning of the year, Martin, on Pretty Woman, that fantastic musical, and they wanted just a bedside light. And what do you mean you can't get a light bulb? It's like, go on then. Off you nip, down to Dias, you come back with a proper bulb, and of course you can't do it. They just don't exist. So it's getting really difficult.
What is the get around for that now then? What does that mean for you guys?
You still can get tungsten light bulbs. You want to pay through the teeth for them. There are still some kicking around, but suddenly you're paying like £10 for a light bulb that used to cost 99 pence.
Yeah,
that's one get around. I do quite a lot of stuff now at low voltage because 12-volt capsule lights are still in existence. So if you don't see the actual bulb, you can put a 12-volt capsule light in it and run the whole thing through a 12-volt transformer.
Or
which has
if
the
it's
added
wireless.
advantage it's a bit safer as well.
Yeah. Or quite often everyone wants things wireless now, don't they, Martin? Gone are the days.
Batteries is the way to go.
Gone are the days of just running a piece of TRS and someone unplugging it and picking it up and carrying it off. No, got to be wireless. Can't have any of that stuff. So
Yeah.
And then when people, they specify something as wireless, but they haven't realised that you've got to get a battery into something and a receiver dimmer, and that stuff isn't wafer thin.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, my cat's trying to jump up. Hi, say hello to everyone. Hi, Holly says hello. So,
and how much of in terms of sourcing and building practicals, I mean, how much is down to you guys versus the Howard Eatons of the world? When do you get someone like Howard involved in that?
Well, that's a very interesting question, isn't it? Again, it's very largely dependent on scale and budget. In a lot of the plays I do, if it's just a couple of table lamps, then I will happily undertake that myself. You do find, though, that some production managers do take the piss, especially when they've got to know me a bit and know that I do know how to use a screwdriver. They do suddenly expect me to undertake more than I'm very happy or more than I'm willing to undertake. I mean, recently I did a production recently where these two old vintage chandeliers suddenly turned up, which needed completely rewiring, and production manager thought I was going to undertake that.
I'm guessing, Martin, in a West End theatre as well, was it?
It wasn't a West End theatre.
And these days, West End theatres don't stock anything. No. The only thing they stock is the light bulbs for the auditorium house lights. Gone are the days of having a little workshop where you can go down there and there's a selection of bits and there's some wire and some crimps. People have nothing. No, I mean, it's great if you're the National Theatre and each theatre has its own department with a full workshop of bits. But in the West End Theatre, you're reduced to going around what few hardware shops there are in the West End, or you're buying it in and having it sent in. It's sort of a false economy, really. Things like chandeliers that need rewiring need to go somewhere to be rewired and then tested. So
it's interesting because coming back to one of the very first questions you said about money, Rory. I have my own accounts with various electrical people and people like RS Components and CPC. And along with my spreadsheet saying how many man days I think the job's going to be, I also send out a little letter saying, just so you know, if you want me to wire any bits of wiring, that's absolutely fine. I'm happy to buy it all personally through my accounts, but I'm going to charge it on to you at plus 20%.
Yeah.
And all you're going to get from me is an invoice saying electrical components this much. You're not going to get the receipts or anything. You're just going to get a bill. And some production managers, producers are quite cool with that. Some throw up their hands in dismay, going, "How completely outrageous! You can't be marking up this stuff." And I go, "Well, that's absolutely fine. Every time I want to buy something, I'll come to you and ask you to purchase it, or I'll come to you for petty cash before I buy it." And they go, "Oh no, we'll buy it through the lighting hire company." I go, "Well, that's absolutely fine, but ask White Light to put in this RS order, and they will mark it up by 50%. But that's absolutely fine." And they usually come way round to my way of thinking.
Yeah, I could imagine. Yeah. It's good though, isn't it? It's that transparency though as well. I mean, that's you being really clear on how that.
And laying it on the table right at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because in the heat of the moment, it's so easy to think, "Oh, you know what? It's just £9.99. I'll just pay it myself and claim it back on petty cash." And once you've gone down that slippery slope, it's a slippery slope.
Yeah, definitely. There's a couple of questions here that I was just going to ask you dead quick. One of them, with so much software and technology out now for use, Vectorworks, AutoCAD, Lightright, etc., is there any certain software that you rely on and use on most of your shows?
I use Lightright on absolutely everything.
Yeah.
I guess I use Vectorworks, but only to view plans. But not every show needs that. If someone can send a PDF, that's fine. I use Lightright. I use Excel. So learning how to use Excel. Excel is for numbers. It's not for people to write their addresses in.
Yeah.
As in 57 high street. It's to put data into and to then manipulate that data to display it how you want to. But yeah, I use Excel and Lightright in every single show I do. So
yeah,
that's how the budget sheet starts, doesn't it, Martin? In Excel. There you go. And
do you actually own full-blown Vectorworks, Pete?
I do, Martin. Yes.
Wow. You see, I don't.
I was lucky enough that I was bought it by Disney back in 1999 as Mini CAD or whatever it was called then.
Yeah, it was Mini CAD.
So the great Crosby and Marlowe said, "No, yeah, we'll buy you that." And since then, I've always kept it up, and I now have Service Select. So I pay so much each year. But I mean, it started off as the poor man's AutoCAD, and it was 500 quid against £2,000. It's now expensive, but not as expensive as AutoCAD.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a question now, Rory. Do you own Vectorworks?
I do, yeah, I do. But I do the same thing of Service Select. So I paid a one-off big whack, and now I pay an annual thing to always be on the latest everything.
Yeah.
So I'm just a cheapskate. I don't own Vectorworks.
Right.
Because I don't really draw lighting plans.
Yeah.
I receive lighting plans. I've got Vectorworks Viewer, so I can view them. But most of the time they come now as PDFs, and that's fine. So like Pete, the two main bits of software I use are Lightright and Excel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I have a very cheap CAD package that can produce DWG drawings.
Yeah.
So I just want to quickly sketch something up. I can produce a DWG.
do you use MLA, Martin?
Not really. I can view it and I receive MLA files, but I don't use it in preference to all.
No, I went through a stage of trying to export my Lightright files into MLA to support Andy, and it just didn't quite do what I wanted it to do. So, like you, I can view MLA, and it's something that anyone wanting to be an associate designer needs to have a MLA, and they need to understand how to photograph the show. And I would also argue that anyone that wants to be an associate needs to be able to understand Lightright in its full.
Yeah.
And be able to enter the right data into the right cells. So
yeah, I agree. I mean, it's tricky. The cost thing is so hard, isn't it? I mean, I know that it's something that comes up time and time again, but for me, what I find so frustrating is it's a tool for me drawing my work, but I generally end up sending a PDF to people, and you go, "Oh my God, you had to do all this to get to the point of just sending off a PDF." Like, so it's an expensive PDF, really.
Yeah, I think Lightright would benefit from a viewer, so that people could view Lightright files in different formats, but just not be able to change any of the information. So you could send someone a file and they could view it in channel format or dimmer format or color or whatever. But yeah, it is expensive. But if that's what you want to do as your chosen career, then you need to pay for things, don't you?
Yeah, you've not got much choice.
Yeah, I mean, but there are also cheaper CAD lighting packages out there, aren't there?
There are, yes.
It's just that Vectorworks has become the norm, and you're almost not taken seriously unless you produce a Vectorworks plan.
Yeah.
Sadly,
yes, it is sad. So.
Yeah. Another question here. As an up and coming lighting designer and lighting technician who's applied for the Beauty and the Beast tour, how easy is it to get into these big shows tours, and someone who's got crew experience, fit ups, load-ins, etc.? Sorry, I sort of butchered that question, but I think you get the drift.
It's difficult. How long a CV do you like to read, Martin?
I was always taught that it should always fit on one page of A4.
Correct.
And beyond the first page, I lose interest rapidly, to be honest.
Yeah. And I was taught it was one page of A4, and I was taught by Martin Chisnall when I was at university.
It must be true then.
It
must be true. Yeah. So
I can't wade through multiple pages of CV.
Yeah.
You can just begin to see where it's being padded out, and
yeah.
When I get CVs for people who want to be the number 3 electrician, I'm not interested. They've been a production manager on some little show or a lighting designer. Anyone that wants to be a lighting designer, if that's on the CV, that almost certainly just goes onto the I don't want that pile.
Yeah.
Because I don't want a lighting designer. I don't want a production electrician. I've got enough of them.
Yeah.
I want, if I want someone that wants to run a show, I'd much prefer. In fact, I did hire someone. I hired young Dale Driscoll, who's now an associate.
Yeah.
I hired him because his piece of paper to apply for the first Lion King tour in 2012 said, I really want to do this tour. I don't really have much experience. I've done Lion King in London. I haven't managed to blow myself up, but I'd really like to go on tour. So we hired him. And all the people that claim to have 5,000 qualifications in this, and I can program this desk and that. If you're the number 3 electrician, no one's going to ask you to program the rig check. You know, it's just, I don't want that. I prefer people to be really honest and say, I really want to go out on tour and learn something.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd like to see anyway.
I agree with Pete. If you're interviewing a number 1 or number 2 position, then yes, I do read the past experience.
Yeah.
But for number 3, I almost just take a punt sometimes, because you think, well, if you can't take a punt on number 3, how does anybody get into the industry? So
Yeah,
completely.
And more to the point, don't lie about your references, because we do phone up people. We do go, oh, I know someone that did that tour. So I'm not going to say any names, but I did have someone apply for a job claiming to be the chief electrician on a tour that I was the production electrician on. You go, yeah. I think I might see through that pretty bloody quick. So
read the room. I mean, come on.
they haven't really done their research there, have they?
No. In this game, everyone has to start at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
They really do, and you learn so much. So going in, I don't know whether it happens now. When me and Martin grew up, you started off as a casual electrician, didn't you, Martin? Really, you started off at the bottom.
Absolutely.
And that was a part-time job. So I went to college for a year, and I was a casual electrician on Singing in the Rain in the evening. And the way the college was orientated, those afternoon lessons on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday were mostly rubbish lessons that we didn't have to pay any attention to. So it was the sound class for electricians. I didn't go to college to be a sound engineer. I certainly didn't go to college to be an actor. So that lesson went straight out the window and blah, blah. So that was really good at letting you go and do another job, which is where you start to learn things. And then you go from being casual to you maybe get a full-time role, probably not in the West End because you don't really do much, but certainly out of London, you'll learn a lot more.
Yeah.
Going to do load-ins, load-outs, things like that.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. I want to ask you a bit about something in the venue.
Yes.
So it could just be me, but I feel like production desks are getting bigger and bigger and bigger and more complicated, and everyone wants to be networked together, and everyone needs X amount of screens. So when you're approached about this wonderful amount of stuff, it must take a surprisingly large part of your resources and time to actually set that up, does it?
Yes.
Well, yes. I mean, on big shows, sometimes we actually employ somebody just to come in and set the production desks up.
Okay.
And don't forget, on some big American shows, they will actually send through, along with their lighting plan, they will send through a plan of how they want their production desk set up.
Yeah.
Generally, I try and largely ignore that as much as possible and do the exact opposite, just to just out of sheer spite. I mean, yeah, it's become a status symbol, really. Sadly, the more real estate you have in your production desks, the more monitors you have, the more central you are on the center line. Can you be central on a center line? Yes, of course. Yeah. You know, it's look at me, look how important I am.
I've just been asked, Martin, for 12 pucks.
On one desk, on one show?
Yeah. 12 pucks and 24 monitors of varying sizes and abilities. And you go, really? Do you not want to actually just look at the stage? You know, we might as well set them up in a bar somewhere facing the wrong way and they can look at monitors. But yeah, 24 monitors they want. Okay. And then you get the power. So I frequently run 32 amp 3-phase to the auditorium and distribute it off. So and then you still have to do the daily round of unplugging people's heaters in the winter, unplugging their fans in the summer, because there just isn't enough power for everything that everyone wants these days.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you, how involved is like a programmer in that discussion? I mean, because I presume they've got an opinion on what they need from a networking point of view as well.
Yep. Yeah. I normally I normally rely on my programmer to, or not my program, the programmer, to tell me exactly what he wants or she wants, rather than what the American associate thinks they need to have. So
yeah.
And you know, because it's not just some power these days and some little lights. You've got to get whatever desk network down there. You've got to put it in a switch. Some people ask for their production desks to be on UPSs, so that in the event that the building power fails, they can still carry on lighting. Lighting with what, I ask, because everything's going to be off, but they insist it's on a UPS. So,
yeah.
And it takes up a huge amount of real estate as well.
Yeah. Maybe a wider question about that though, on the programmer relationship. Things like the patch. Who do you come up with that, or does the programmer come up with that? Or, you know, when you've got all of these toys, as you say now, with endless modes and options and direct, and what's that conversation between the two of you?
I generally come up with the patch because the designer or the associate will provide me with channel numbers. I put the DMX addresses against those numbers, so effectively I'm creating the patch at that point.
Yeah. One big thing to add, Martin, is trying to get what mode people want to run their bloody lights in.
Well, yes.
And that's always, someone says, oh, it should be this, then someone says, no, it should be that. And then you go, oh, what did you use last time? Oh, well, you know, last time we did this. And you go, well, just tell me what you want, you know?
And unfortunately, so many times the fallback position is, oh, just put it in the biggest mode, because I must have absolute control of every last pixel.
Yeah.
Though you know they're not going to use it.
Yeah.
So I actually have great respect for designers who don't necessarily choose the most expansive mode, because they accept that, well, I don't need any of those features. So actually that mode 2, which only uses 12 addresses, would be just fine.
Yeah. So to all those designers, really, as you spec the latest, you know, spanky wanky 5000, do you want it to be spanky wanky 5000, or can it be spanky wanky 500? Because can you afford the control system to control the lights you've specified?
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that those desks cost more money the more powerful they get.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not changed now, because ETC, for example, on EOS, they do basic and unlocked. So the basic is whatever it is for each of the desks. Unlocked is just 24,000 or whatever it is. Whereas, you know, you'll still get companies saying, oh, I've got an 8K. Is that okay? So someone has to count. Do they want more than 8,000 parameters?
Yeah.
And if the designer says, oh, yeah, that'd be fine, and then asks for all the lights to be in extra wide mode, all of a sudden you 8,000 isn't enough.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, like Martin, I do the patch and I send it to the programmer, and then hopefully the programmer doesn't email me and say, there's a massive clash on this, Pete. What have you done wrong? Doesn't happen very often, but it's normally a dyslexic typo goes in there somewhere.
Yeah. It's just testing to see if they're reading it all, isn't it? That's all it is.
Right.
It's just testing to see if the programmer's reading it all. That's all.
Yeah.
When it comes to rigging positions, how much information do you need? I mean, you must have been asked for some right faffy positions over your time. What do you need? Is it more about, you know, I need the light to do this shot, and I'd ideally like it from over here? Or what? How much information do you need? I'm thinking more specifically awkward, customy things.
If it's something that is really, really awkward, or, you know, yes, this needs to see through a window on a set or through a door, but then you can also go to the really basic. What I really want is a 4-point front of house coverage. So squeeze these lights in wherever you can.
Yeah.
So there's sort of two sides to it, Martin, isn't there? I mean, on an overhead lighting bar, it's quite nice to see the center line and then measurements out from center. So you know what you want.
Yes, absolutely. All that comes back to just the plan being at scale, of course, because being old-fashioned, I will just stand there on stage with a scale plan on a table in front of me and a scale rule. Yeah. Just laid on the plan, and that will just tell you so much.
Yes.
It's interesting, isn't it, what Pete was saying about what I want really is a 4-area general cover. I mean, yes, there are some designers who will try and specify to the nearest millimetre where they want lights to go front of house to achieve that, including putting lights where it's quite patently impossible to put them, just because it works out in their head to get the angles correct. Or there are other designers who just go, it's just a 3-air general cover, just make it work, that's fine. So it's two different approaches, I guess.
And is that helpful if they have that technical background? I mean, is it easier when they say to you, I want to do X, Y, and Z, here's the dream? Or do you prefer, I want to do this, this, and this, and here's how I think we should do it?
Depends how good they are.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing worse than the designer who thinks they're really technical but doesn't really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Generally, I think I prefer to be left to my own devices to work out the technical aspect, because that's probably a large part of the job to some extent.
What's really nice, and it doesn't happen very often these days, is that you meet with the designer in the venue beforehand, a week or 2 weeks beforehand, and discuss front of house. Oh, that'd be okay. We'll get something up there and something up there and whatever. That doesn't happen very often these days, Martin, does it? I remember you used to do a site meeting with the lighting designer, didn't you? And have a little look.
Yes, happy days.
Yeah, and use what positions were available in the building. Because back then, quite a lot of places would have a perch, and they still do have a perch. You go, oh yeah, God, will you use that? And that'd be fine. And then that instantly saves you a whole amount of time prepping kit that you don't need and trying to take metalwork into a building that exists already. Or they adapt their design to go, do you know what? I know I've drawn 8 lights, but I can get away with 6 on there. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
So.
Something else that used to be really good and is not so common these days, this is more a set design thing, is designing a show that fits in the theatre that you're going into.
Being old-fashioned again, Martin.
I know. But there used to be a thing where designers would design a show that fitted on the stage. But now, again, designers seem to like to, the set to go under the fly floors to the 4 walls of the theatre and then a bit beyond. So, yeah.
Which also, I mean, on a similar note, do you have a lot of trouble when they go, right, we're doing one of these ones, no masking, don't want to see anything, or sorry, I want to see everything, which always means, but not the fire extinguisher, not the distro, not the,
Exactly. If I had £1 for every show I did where the designer said, oh, and I want to see the back wall of the theatre just as it is now.
Yeah.
And then you get there and you go, oh, I didn't realise it looked like that. I don't really want to see that exit sign. And can we just cover up that fire extinguisher? And now I think about it, I don't like those pipes.
Yeah. And I didn't
realise.
realise.
Can we cover the whole thing up with vac form brickwork?
Yeah. Or I didn't realise I'd be able to see people walking around behind it.
Yes.
Well, why not? You've drawn a set with no back to it. Why did you think you wouldn't see people walking about? I mean, quite bizarre.
You might have noticed that Peace and I can be quite cynical at times.
Yeah.
It's not coming through, lads.
It's not.
I'm going to make that even worse now. What is the one position that people constantly draw that's just a massive pain in the arse?
More and more these days, it's low circle fronts with 10 moving lights on or something like that.
Okay.
So most places, most on the touring circuit, if you get 50 kilos a metre, that's a great venue.
Okay.
And quite often the lights don't physically fit front to back on them. So that's becoming a right pain in the arse.
Yeah.
What do you think, Martin? Cross booms. So if lighting designers could discuss with sound designers what they want to do, and then both of them draw the plan around that, because as much as we hate to admit it, Martin, we know that sound has to be on that cross wall. It's prime real estate. But all they've got to do is, again, go to the theatre together and discuss it.
Yeah.
And don't draw a speaker and a light in the same place, because we try to work magic, but we all know magic doesn't actually exist. One of them's going to win. It's generally the speaker.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's quite good. We're now getting rid of line arrays, aren't we? They're going out of fashion, Martin. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, it goes in cycles though, doesn't it? So they'll be back. They'll be back.
Don't say that.
Speakers on the pros, and also advanced trusses is another huge bone of contention.
Yeah.
The sound departments they need to get their cluster as high as possible. we need to obviously see the stage. So
Yeah.
So again, for all those budding designers out there, talk to your sound designer, talk to your co-designer, because it's not one person wins, one person. You're designing the show together, so it's got to work for everyone.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, the sort of topic around this week is asking for what's needed, and and that is a huge thing. Is asking for the time to actually talk about all these things.
Yeah.
Is a huge thing that seems to be overlooked. If we look at the differences between touring and a static production, say, what do you think some of the most common pitfalls designers fall into in terms of not being realistic are? Is it on tours? Is it focus time? Is it budget? What do you think it is?
Too many lights.
Just overall too many things.
Yeah, you have to design within the time scale of the load in. So how many hours from loading in to your first preview or first show if it's on tour? How long have you got? People frequently draw more than is physically possible.
Mm-hmm.
So would you not agree, Martin?
Yeah, and also how adaptable is your rig? Because sooner or later that show is going to go into a theatre that is just patently too small.
Yeah.
And then those side masking legs are going to come on 2 meters aside. But your truss that is 10 meters wide, how is that going to fit between the fly floors that are only 8 meters apart?
Yeah.
Some designers, some production electricians are really good at making rigs that are modular and you can add bits at the end or take them away. Others, not so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and do you find that do you ever have to go back and say, like, that is a ridiculous amount of front of house? That is not possible.
Yeah. I used to try and work it. I'll do my best to work it and go, well, this just isn't workable. Now I just say that isn't going to happen. So you need to design something that is recreatable for that opening period. So, and then we can achieve it in every venue.
And also these venues are going to be booked easily a year in advance, possibly longer. And the person who's booking the venues has not got the lighting plan in front of them thinking, well, I can't book that venue because the show's not going to fit in there.
Yeah.
And equally, no producer's going to cancel the show because I phone up and say, we can't really fit all the lights in there, so we'll have to cancel that date.
Yeah.
I've never seen that happen yet. So
especially front of house, but be realistic about what you can get front of house. So because they're you get narrow venues between the fly floors, stuff like that, but people are often very optimistic about how many lights you can get on a circle front. Sometimes that circle front doesn't actually exist.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of places you still can't hang an advance truss.
Yeah.
So there's no point designing and lighting a show with positions that maybe won't exist in 50% of the venues.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Follow spot positions is always another interesting one. If you've got a show that's been designed around having follow spots on centre, quite often you go to a venue where they're in the side slip positions with no option of getting them on centre.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the other thing, I was always told to be really careful when you're designing about truck space. And I think a lot of people go, oh, it's not my problem. And you go, well, it's going to become your problem when you can't actually take all this stuff around the place.
Yeah, I mean, but over the years, we've all got much better at packaging things.
Yeah.
And all the rental companies have got much better at the right size flight cases. There was a time, a long time ago, where White Light were the worst company for flight cases. Do you remember those days, Martin? Where you wandered around the warehouse and you found something that looked like a flight case. Invariably, you'd open it up and it'd have a load of inserts for something. So you'd be smashing them out with a hammer to try and get your power lock set into or cam lock set into. But now, pretty much all the companies they're all on board with 600mm wide flight case, blah, you can go 4 across, 2 high. And truss is getting better, Martin, as well, isn't it? Truss and towers and stuff.
We're quite compact now, but also I think everybody gets a sense of scale of the show quite early on. I mean, if it's a really small tour, it might be, well, if it's a really small tour, you might be using some in-house equipment anyway, God forbid.
Yep.
But if it's a small tour, you might be sharing a truck with sound, half a truck each. on a very small show. Typically, otherwise, you'll have a truck of lighting. On a bigger show, you'll be getting 2 trucks of lighting. On a really big show, you can have almost as many trucks as you want, because no one's going to reduce the lighting budget because they can't afford the trucks to tour the kit around, I don't think.
Oh, they still go on about it, Martin.
Well,
I mean, 24 trailers. Yeah, it sounds like a lot. And you go, well, that's 24 grand really for a move. So does 25 grand make any difference? And then you work out how much time you're going to save. I don't know, 30 local crew at £50 an hour on load out rate. That extra £1,000 doesn't take long before you're using that amount of labour. It just disappears so quickly. Whereas, the reason rock and roll moves so fast is they push.
Yeah.
Don't even push and tip. Push the boxes on, bang, bang, bang. And they can load out 20 trailers in 2 hours because that's the real expense. And they can get to the next venue so they can go back to back night after night after night because they're not trying to ram trailers to within an inch of the ceiling because that just takes too long.
Also, they're 20 trailers will have 20 tractor units with them.
That is true.
In theatre, you might be doing a move with 20 trailers, but you find there's only 4 tractor units doing the whole move.
Yeah.
So every time you try to swap a trailer around, it can be an hour's turnaround to get the next trailer in.
Yeah. And what's the difference for you both then in terms of the sort of prep and install of a short run versus a long thing? I mean, maybe I should do that differently. The prep and install of like something that's static versus something that's touring. It must be a different way for you to approach it, I presume.
Yeah, you spend a lot more time building a tour. Would you not agree, Martin? So,
absolutely. I mean, just one thing as an example, just the standard and quality of labelling that you would do on a tour would be much more, I think, than it would be on a 3-month West End run. Quite often, just because the producer won't pay for the prep time to label something to that quality.
Yeah.
If it's never going to move.
Yeah. And do you ever have to go back to them and say, no, listen, we do need this prep time because like this is going out, and once it's out, it's out there. Like.
Go on, Martin.
I don't know about going back. I mean, if a job needs to be done to a certain standard, then you just need to make that very clear at the beginning.
Yeah.
Which goes back
to your that spreadsheet saying to prep this show, it's going to be 2 weeks, 5 people a day for 5 days for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
To produce that standard of tour.
Yeah.
But you spend a lot more time before you even walk into the hire company. You spend a lot more time on a tour, designing metalwork, working. How's this going to work? How's that going to work? What's the best way we can break this lighting position up into as fewer chunks as possible, but chunks that are still manageable.
Yeah.
You spend a lot of time doing that, and then quite often you come up with something really, really good and clever, and then they don't want to pay for that sort of truss or those lengths. So you end up having to compromise where you want to put the splits on something because they only want to pay for the 10-foot lengths, and no one's got the 2 8-foots that you really need. So you sort of end up compromising around that sometimes, which is really irritating when it's just about a length of truss. So
yeah. And are there things that you think a designer should look at and consider differently with the view to putting in a rig? I mean, like in terms of kit and reliability, is there stuff that you see going out on tours that you're like, why do we keep putting this in a touring rig? Or is it all slightly more reliable now?
Not so much now. What is nice, if someone's designing a show and they know it's going to go onto truss work, so the overhead bars are going to be truss, is to talk to ourselves, me and Martin and Jerry and whoever, and say, what truss are we going to use? And draw the rig as those sections of truss. Because the last thing we want to be doing is having to take lights off where the truss joints are. Because that's the right pain. Because you've then got the truss with a bit of a gap. You've then got a flight case with some lights in it. So you're using more and more truck space and more time. And then there's always the danger that box doesn't quite make it onto that truck. So you then end up hanging a truss, but your 2 lights missing or something like that. That's quite irritating.
Yeah.
That's really a key, is for the designer to discuss with the production electrician the best way of doing the show.
Yeah. How do we package this to to achieve the best results? Which means that they get their design every single venue. They get that. Everything's in the same place. So
yeah. And if one of the things that we always get told is be reasonable when it comes to things like focus time and stuff. Look at how much time you've got. Be reasonable. Do you have a thing in your head of like, it takes this long for a team to focus a rig? Do you have like, it takes this long per unit as a good start point for people?
Well, focus time's changed, hasn't it? Because it used to be, yes, people going around with a taller scope and going along each lighting bar and focusing conventional fixtures.
Yeah.
Now it's not uncommon to have virtually no conventional fixtures at all. The word focus to be just about moving lights.
Yeah.
Which is really all about the programmer and maybe an associate LD if the show has one.
Yeah.
I don't generally hang around to do moving light focus if I can possibly help it.
No.
Yeah.
I'm just a hindrance, really. The programmer's sitting out front; they know where the lights go. They don't need me.
Well, we've got to keep the brewers and the vineyards going, Martin, haven't we? That's the thing.
Do you think that time gets overlooked, though? I mean, because I certainly have done shows where producers go, "Oh well, come on now, it's all movers though," and you go, "Yeah, but that still is." There are adjustments.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Which is why you still do find sometimes the moving light focus session gets shunted into a late night, sometimes overnight call.
Yeah.
Which does have the advantage they can have the stage to themselves, and has the advantage that I can go to the pub and then go to bed. So that's a win-win, really.
Yeah, definitely. And out of interest,
what they then forget though is that if you've got a static set, that's fine. But if the focus involves moving scenery around or flying bits and pieces in and out, then you may have to call automation and flyman for that night call as well.
Yeah,
which does sometimes throw a spanner in the works.
Yeah, you've really got to remember to ask for those things, haven't you?
Yeah.
You find out it's too late when it's 2:30 in the morning and you go, oh, okay, we'll leave that there. Do you prefer putting together, I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask anyway, do you prefer putting together a touring production or a static sort of long runner thing?
Martin?
I like both. I am largely over touring, I've decided. I think I prefer doing static shows because I think touring is all it's all just a little bit too frantic and just fighting to get the show open in time. It's not really what I want to be doing anymore. I like to be slightly slower, slightly more considered, slightly more careful in a nice long West End fit up. Now I know there are some tours where it's not that frantic. I mean, I think Beauty and the Lion King is several days long, isn't it, Pete? So you get...
yeah, we did 7 weeks in Bristol last summer. So
yeah,
that was we did a week of loading effectively. That was the fastest time it's ever been done, was 7 weeks. So we did a week of loading and a week of tech, and then spent the rest of the time with the cast.
But I think it's fair to say those tours are still very much the exception, though.
Yeah, totally.
Most tours you'll be loading in Sunday morning, and you'll be looking to open
Saturday, maybe.
I was going to say if that. I mean, midweek is very common.
Yeah. Touring or static?
I like doing touring if it's done well.
Mm-hmm.
It's if the management appreciate what they're trying to achieve and they're willing to throw the right finances at it. I'm sort of bored now of cheap managements who me and Martin all know who we're talking about, but they load it in on Sunday for a first show on a Wednesday and then that show's off on the road moving every week for the next 52 weeks. You know, that just isn't enough time to do it properly, I don't think. I do like a nice big West End fit up. That's quite nice. The commuting gets a little bit dull after a while. But yeah, I guess I still like the touring.
Yeah.
So you tend to, as on a purely monetary thing, I make more money out of touring because the scale shows you're getting back, whether it's every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or every 6 months in the case of a Lion King. Whereas you do a long West End show, yes, we make an awful lot of money, and then it sort of ends because I don't know whether you've ever achieved it, Martin. I've really tried to get retainers, but I've never managed to. So
I had one once a long time ago, but
yeah.
No.
Even though those same shows that have come from Broadway, where the Broadway electrician still gets a retainer and has done for 20 odd years, they still refuse to pay it in England because it's different. Yeah, but you make just as much money. So strangely enough, when something goes wrong, they're pretty quick on the phone. Any chance you can get here tonight? Can you get in tomorrow morning? And you go, if I had a retainer, I might have answered that call last night. You, Martin, you really like doing the little plays, don't you, and stuff? So.
Well, I do.
I enjoy going to see them.
Yeah.
On a purely monetary point of view, I find I get paid
just the same, dear.
Just the same for without having to make long train journeys and spend lots of time in hotel bedrooms.
Yeah.
And obviously living so close to London, that works for me. So I'm quite happy doing a little play in the West End. It's still you can still account to adds up to maybe 3 weeks' work. We've had all the pre-production and prepping, and there's obviously a constant turnover as well. So
we're starting to sort of come towards the end, but I wanted to ask you something that I'm interested in, which is over both of your careers, you must have seen a huge sort of generational shift from designers who have come from like an electrician background into what is now universities churning out people instantly branded as lighting designers. Do you see a difference in the work of the two sides of that? And do you think there's less understanding of the process as a whole now? That's a big question, sorry, but I was just curious.
Well, how many of these people on this screen here have been to drama college is the question. How many people are we about to offend?
No, I don't think you're going to offend too many. I did think about it before. I think you'll be okay. I think you'll be
okay.
Something that Pete was alluding to earlier. Yeah, it's all too easy to go to drama school and take a course in lighting design or production management or whatever, and come out with a bit of paper and say, look, I am now a lighting designer because I've got this bit of paper. I am now a production manager because I've got a bit of paper that says I am. And Pete was saying, we're both of the school that says, well, actually, no, you're not a production manager till you've started at the beginning and worked your way up and actually production managed some shows. We almost don't care what bit of paper you've got and what it says on it.
Yeah.
There are so many lighting designers being, can I use the phrase, churned out?
I was going to say churned, Martin. Yes.
Churned out. There must be, I don't know, you probably got a better idea than me, Rory. How many lighting designers do you think the colleges churn out each year?
Oh, yeah. There's got to be 50 of them at least. At the very least. Just from the sort of drama school, not even universities, just, people.
And the hard reality is there probably isn't the jobs to go around for that number of lighting designers. It's the harsh truth.
Yeah. I just wondered if you felt that there was, because part of what I've been trying to achieve with these various interviews is a sort of overview of the process as a whole, because I feel like it can be slightly lacking sometimes, because you just, especially if you've gone to formal training, there's a way that place does it, and that's sort of how you do it. And I wondered if that's something that you've noticed out and about.
I did some work at Guildhall, covering for Jerry, actually, Martin. I did a week down there, which was absolutely fascinating. And I thought I was going there to sort of help teach and things like that. I actually ended up going to put a lighting rig in because I didn't have enough people. But I was there for a couple of days and they didn't need me, so I went back. And all of a sudden, you couldn't fly anything in. Everything had been tidied up to within an inch of its life. So I said, well, Why has this happened? Oh, well, we mark them, so it all has to be neat. And it's like, well, it has to be neat, but it has to be usable. So in order for those people to get their marks, there's interfered with the system to the point that you couldn't fly a bar in anywhere to fix a fault. This just doesn't happen in the real world. So part of it is, I wonder whether students are being taught what happens, whether they've been given the right information, what they have to do. Because I probably shouldn't say this, but a lot of people teaching don't do it any longer. So they're possibly out of touch with what we really do now. I mean, there was a time when all theatres had their own light designers and things like that. And as the chief electrician of a rep company, you would probably be lighting half of the shows, and then they'd invite a designer in. So but that just doesn't happen anymore. I don't know. Do you know anywhere, Martin, where the chief electrician would light a show now?
I think it probably still does happen in some of the smaller theatres. Trouble is, I think both you and I, Peter, are in that stage in our career where we don't
go there. We
don't work in those theatres, and we rarely meet the next young generation of up and coming lighting designers. So we're not in a best position to comment, really.
No, it's just interesting because I think there is a whole argument that, and I had formal training, or whatever you want to call it. But I mean, nothing beats the real world experience, because I think when you're in that bubble of, you know exactly what you have to do to get the higher marks, as you said, doesn't necessarily mean that's what you should take forward. Always.
But you can take a group of well-known designers, so Andy Bridge, Paul Pyant, Mark Henderson. They were all at Glyndebourne at the same time. As crew, there's a fantastic photo on a wall somewhere of, even Jerry Amos was there, wasn't he, Martin? You must have seen that photo. But all these people were crew. And they've all gone off and become incredibly talented designers from that, because they did the hard work of, the overnight opera change rounds and the this and the that, and then you get to see all these different designers coming in, so you can,
definitely. Sorry, go on.
I don't know whether you can teach design on any scale, of whether it's lighting, design, sound. I suspect you can either do it or you can't. I don't know if you can teach people that. You can't teach someone to be an artist, can you? They can go to the Royal Academy and be taught how to do line drawings, but you can either do it or you can't. I don't know.
Yeah, you can teach the theory and the mechanics of it, can't you? But it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be good at it.
Yeah, and you can't. Yeah, there's a big thing about you can't teach the eye, can you? Like that's. No. Yeah. One final question that's come in here. As someone who's been learning on the job with electrics, is there any resources or reading that you would recommend to expand knowledge of electrical systems?
Electricity in general, do you mean? Or
silence?
I'm not sure. That's just all it says. But yeah, possibly. I think let's go with that.
Well, there is the course that you were just talking about, actually, Pete, which could be relevant.
There is. I'm halfway through doing BS 7909, which is one of the dullest things I've done for a long time. But what has become very apparent in the 2 days I was there was there's a lot of people that don't understand Ohm's law, V equals IR, yeah? And to the point where the tutor just turned around to one person and said, if you can't redo this equation to get I equals whatever, if you don't understand how to do that, I can't help you. You either understand this and you take it for granted that George Ohm said this is Ohm's law and it's been proven to be correct. And that is sort of the fundamental of electricity. So I'm sure there's a lot of good books on craft theory of electricity and how not to kill yourself. Don't go and buy the 18th or 19th edition regs, because it's 90 quid and it won't teach you anything. It will tell you everything you can't do, but it won't teach you the things you need to know. But I think understanding electricity and what it does isn't a bad thing to know.
Yeah. I mean, the ABTT, bless them, love them or hate them, they do have some training courses. Which will cover basically electrical theory.
But there was someone on this course that I started this week, and as far as I could work out, They were probably mid-20s, and all they'd seem to have done was just go from one course to the next course to be that person that's going to send me a CV with 2 sheets of qualifications. Now, from sitting looking at them, I wouldn't trust them to wear a plug, never mind about rigger source 4, because they probably haven't done a course on rigging source 4s. I don't know, but you can learn an awful lot on the job in this profession.
Yeah, definitely.
And learn from people around you. So...
Yeah. We're just sort of at the end now, but what I've been doing with everyone is 5 sort of quick fire questions as a sort of round up. So brace yourself. I know it's everybody's like worst nightmare, isn't it? So first question, what is your nightmare discovery on a fit up?
Not enough power.
That I fundamentally not paid attention to something, and that something has just turned around and bitten me in my backside big time. Nice. And you never know what that's going to be.
Yeah.
It turns around and bites you.
Yeah.
Okay, you're out on the road, or you're away working somewhere. Your favourite post fit up meal with the team?
Guinness, peanuts.
I'm always Italian or curry.
You are.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. I subscribe to something called Showbiz Supper, which normally takes place in a pub, and involves going through the snack counter behind the bar. So.
Okay. That's great. Yeah. One effect that you're always asked to provide that you just wish you weren't.
Impossible haze. Auditorium blackout. Yeah. Impossible haze. We want haze, but we don't want to see where it's coming from. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Bit of a niche question. Favorite hotel chain?
Ooh.
Ooh. I can tell you the ones I don't like.
Oh, go on. Yeah. Okay, worst one then. What one would you never go to?
Oh, Jury's Inn. If I could avoid every Jury's Inn in the country, I'd be a happy man. There's a lot worse than that.
You can do worse than that.
You can do. It's the fact that there are only 4 key cards in any Jury's Inn, so you can get into every 4th door down the corridor.
Oh, really?
Oh, I must try that.
Yeah. I quite like a Radisson.
Nice.
So, what I like on a big, long, like on a tour setup, so Bristol last year, I had an apartment. That's quite nice.
Yeah.
Apartments if you're there a long time, apartments are the way to go, definitely.
Yeah.
Just the ability to cook your own food, not have to go out and eat out every night.
To be able to have your breakfast in your pajamas is lovely, or your PJs or whatever. You know.
I do that anyway, even when I go downstairs.
Do you? Is that why you get the funny looks, Martin?
It must be. I must remember to put pajamas on next time as well.
Okay, yeah. Actually, Malmaisons are quite good, aren't they? But sometimes they can be too stuck up their own arses. So. Or they look like brothels.
Out of vogue recently. I haven't been in a Mal. This is going to sound terrible, isn't it? Just discussing all these hotels.
No, this is I'm glad I've asked this now. This is interesting.
I haven't been in a Malmaison for a very long time.
Right. I can't remember when I was last actually.
Even within a hotel chain, different hotels can be so variable.
What about if you're booking it yourself, Martin? If you got to go somewhere for one night, like I'm doing next week, so I've booked a hotel to go and finish this fucking course off.
Am I paying for it as well, or just booking it?
No, you're paying for it.
To be honest, and I think we'd all agree, if it's just one night, location is probably quite important. So it's got to be close to where I need to be.
Yeah.
And probably easily accessible from a train station.
Yeah.
For one night, I'm more than happy with a good Premier Inn.
That's what I've just booked. Yep. You can't go wrong.
Yep. I mean, some of the early ones are a bit ropey.
Yeah.
But if it's reasonably modern, you know exactly what you're going to get. It's generally perfectly adequate for our needs. I wouldn't like to spend weeks and weeks there, but for a few nights, absolutely fine.
Definitely. My final question to you, if you were to write an autobiography right now, what would you call it? Yes, I would call it British Theatre and My Part in Its Downfall. I like that. I can't take credit for that. That actually came from somebody called Chris Dunford.
Oh yes, but it's copied from Spike Milligan, though, isn't it? I
think it is.
I really don't know, actually, Rory. I'm sorry, I don't know what I call it. I mean, I could call it shit lighting for cunts, but that's quite rude, isn't it?
My other book would be called No Shutters Required.
No shutters required. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
When we did use to focus conventionals in the middle of the night, we used to stand and go, right, point it here, make it soft on the lens tube. No shutters required.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Brilliant.
And how often, Martin, do we spend our time? You can't just push the lens barrel forward now. You've got to have a piece of 132 in it, haven't you, or something? That's very.
You do more Mark Henderson shows. He's still not just running the lens tube forward till it goes soft.
Yeah, I know. It's the Americans that don't like it. Americans like to achieve the same effects, so they can go worldwide. This rig has 132 in it. So
brilliant.
We came across a problem on Hamilton in that I don't know if anyone knows how they make frost, but basically it's a big roller with a grit on it, and it spins. And obviously, as that grit wears out, the quality of the frost changes.
Yeah.
And 3 years ago, whenever it was, the Roscoe 132 that was being made wasn't the same standard as the Roscoe 132 in America. So we tried all sorts of stuff, and then we had to go back to just push the lens tube out a little tiny bit. Lovely done.
Brilliant.
Hal Binkley.
As a result to any supermarket bags then?
We didn't go down the bag line. No. We did have some sheets of gel flown in from the States because everything is better in the US of A.
I should explain that back in the day with follow spots, mostly on American shows.
Yeah.
It's probably before Roscoe 132 and 114.
Yes, still, Ali Grant, bless him, still doing it up until the day he stopped.
The ideal frost was what they used to call a baggie, which was a supermarket bag, basically, clear plastic supermarket bag, which had just the right degree of frostness about it. But it couldn't be any supermarket bag, and certainly any bags we had in the UK were not up to scratch at all. So you'd have to import all the way from New York these special supermarket bags.
Yeah.
Oh my word.
Referred to as a baggie.
Yeah.
Chaps, we could go on for hours, but thank you so much. We're at the end now, but thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. A pleasure. An absolute pleasure.
It's been fun.
Yeah.
Good.